So hello everyone and welcome again to this last session of today, which the main topic, let me stand out here, is the journey to 10. So as you all know, you've seen on the flyers, you've seen on our invitations, we are 10 years old, and I think for that, a clap, very African. A bigger clap, guys. You know. And there's been a lot. Most of us just remember the last few years. You know, we remember how life was in 2019 before the mask and the COVID and the job losses and all that. And we survived through it all, yeah? So, you know, but that is a very small history. That's like, what, 3 years? But there's been 10 years of this journey. So in detailing this journey of Boogertman, Kenya, yeah, since the inception in Nairobi, until today, its 10th year anniversary, who better to tell us than the man who stood up with a suitcase and traveled out here with little knowledge of it. So let me introduce my panelists. So starting from the extreme right. Yep. Yeah. So we have Chris Coulson, CEO, Indigo Homes. Yep. And then we have Mr. Edward Kirathe, CEO, Acorn Holdings. And then we have the man with the suitcase, Johan de Vet, Director at Boogertman+Partners Architects. And we have the man with the bike, no more, Andrew Kusewa Kilonzi, Director at Boogertman+Partners Architects. So thank you, gentlemen, and I hope you're engaging enough today. So let's start with the crazy guy with the suitcase again. So just tell us, describe us your first day in Kenya and the encounters leading to it.
Should I speak into this?
Yeah, yes, please.
Right, so the first day in Kenya, people said to me, do you realize we've just had massacres in the streets of Nairobi? Okay, those of you old enough would know that that was January 2007, January 2008. I arrived here in March 2008, literally a couple of weeks after the handshake between Kibaki and Kenyatta. And it right. was a momentous day. I knew nothing about it. This man didn't tell me about it. Edward. So that was in 2008. And between 2008 and 2012, there was a period of the man with the suitcase. Me with the suitcase and a laptop that I didn't always know how to work it, but I did it. And so what brought me to Africa? And I think there's maybe 3 pictures, a mountain, an airline, and a woman. So the mountain, that's me 2005. I climbed Kilimanjaro. I was young, you can see the hair was still red, the beard was red, and so that inspired in me the wish to climb Mount Kenya, which we did halfway at the time. And the second one, where's the lady?
Hey, that's not a lady.
I did include the lady.
You got your slides all mixed up.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the second one was Wangari Maathai. I read a biography, and what an inspiring book. I read it twice in one shot, and such an inspiring story. And should I? Yeah. Is this better? Yeah, okay. And what an inspiring lady. Should I hold it up here? Oh, thanks, Edward, thanks, okay. And how inspiring, and actually one of the projects, sadly we never built it. The fundraising came to an end, was the Wangari Maathai Memorial that was going to be built in Hardy, in Karen. And I actually also read the next book, which was a sad book. It's a tale when she moved from what she was doing as the fighter for trees and water, and she went into politics, and that was sad. It was actually sad to see this noble woman just being trampled by politicians. But be it as it may, Wangari Maathai really inspired me to come here. And then the airline, why? I eventually flew so much, I had a platinum business card. That means I could go into any business lounge free of charge, eat as much as I wanted, have Wi-Fi. And I went back to my partners, this must have been early 2012, in fact it was. And I said, guys, this doesn't work. We do two things. Either I stop flying, and that's it, or we open an office in Nairobi. But go back a couple of steps. 2007, November, Edward Karathi comes and sees me in our Bryanston office. Edward, can you remember that? And he said to me, man, I need you to come to this town. And to cut a long story short, maybe he will dwell on that a little bit more. He was a very convincing man. He still is a very convincing man, those of you who know him. Edward is the guy I can truly say brought me to Kenya. You know, Chris Kirubi always said it was him, but it wasn't him. It was you. It was not CK. He always claimed that. And so we then opened the office 1st of October 2012. It's 10 years, can you believe it? Now, I told my partners it's important that I get a very important role player in my life to say yes, my wife. So I flew her up here, put her in a 5-star hotel, took her on a game drive into the Nairobi National Park, and it was deal done. She said, I'm here. Many years later, she said to me, you know what, that was a bit of a marketing ploy you did on me. And so that led to us opening the office, and sadly, that's a picture quite a couple of years later, but there was a picture at one stage of me and Andrew sitting at a desk in a rented office in the corner of his offices in Chaka House in Hurlingham.
Knees touching, eh?
And knees touching, our laptops touching, that was the Boogertman space. So it really was, if I think of highlights, and Robbie, I just want to roll into that. Now you can see, I make notes. Other guys don't make notes, and that's why they forget things. So I make notes so that I don't forget things. So I just briefly want to touch on highlights, and that's enough for today then. Or not for today, I'll close with a couple of other things. The highlights was meeting this young man. He's as old as my oldest son. I met him, he had this motorbike helmet on his head, and you're not supposed to say the man with the motorbike. His wife is not supposed to know about these things.
Yeah, that motorbike is banned, Robbie. Don't be saying.
That motorbike is gone. So I met Andrew, again, through the good person of Edward. And again, Edward, you might want to talk about that just now. Another highlight was simply growing the office, really appointing one staff member after the other. How privileged was that? And we grew to where we are today, a team of in the region of 13 to 15 people, depending on who you believe. Eventually, we got our own office space. We paid for it this time, Edward, in Acorn House. Yeah, we paid. You might not remember. And then, of course, a wonderful, on a personal level, privilege was traveling Kenya. My goodness, me and my wife said, have wheels, we'll travel. We went north, south, east, west. We saw Kenya, literally by car and going into the wild. And that was an amazing experience and something we cherish to this day. So, and I think a final highlight before I'll talk about other things a bit later was I actually decided I need to be part of the scene. So how to do that? I registered as a Borax student. That's the Board of Registration for Architects and QSs, which you have to write your exams. So I write exams at my age. My fear was I would forget things. Of course, that happens. So I wrote exams with a group of students, about 120, I think, a bunch of architects QSs together. And I was the only Mzungu I was the grandfather of them all, and I passed. And I'm so proud of that. That to me really said, you know what, I'm here. And we never became citizens, but we certainly became residents, and we just loved it. So, and I think I also earned a degree of respect from the industry that I really took the trouble to go and sit the exams, which you guys as architects and QSs here actually have to do. So, Robbie, enough said about that journey up to there.
Yeah, no, super. Thank you, thank you. That was a great introduction. I think right now I'm going to skip the guy with who used to have the bike and jump, yeah, and jump to Edward Kirathe, if you don't mind. I'm very curious about your first encounter. Now that I know you facilitated the first encounter with Andrew and as well your first encounter with Johan, I want to know your opinion. What were your assumptions and what were your prejudices? You know, what can you reveal right now? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're asking me in the wrong place, but anyway. No, I'm really pleased to be here. It's so long since I was with architects. I just back to the roots, and it feels nice to see young architects. I still have my practicing certificate. I haven't practiced for 20 years. But when I practiced, we were less than 1,000 architects in the entire country. I think my registration was by A973 or something, and my boss was A264. So it's many years ago, as you can imagine. But yeah, so it's nice to be back amongst architects, and apologies for being late, but these guys would not let me go. They said I must make it. But I guess it's because of the story I have with, Boogertman. So so those who know me well, you know that I practiced architecture for about 5 years. Then I left the profession and I went into project management and real estate investment and development. But when I started developing, or rather working in project management, I had gone to the UK, I'd spent time at the University of Reading, and one of the things that I was keen to do was bring a new architecture to a country, because it was a bit, it was getting stale. So when around 2006, Coca-Cola approached us and they said, we want to put a new head office in Kenya, and you to manage this project. So we got appointed to manage the new Coke head office. Some of you who are old enough, you know Coke had a big office in Upper Hill. And I told them now, and they said it has to be unique. We want something that's out of this world. And so I told them then we have to go to South Africa. And that's the first time, so we went with a team from Coca-Cola, we went to South Africa, we interviewed a number of firms, and I'd been there actually a couple of months before, and I've told you this story, Johan. I came to your offices in Bryanston, and I just called and said, could I see any partner or director? I was kept there for about 45 minutes, an hour. Eventually, someone came and politely talked to me. Can't even remember who it was, and then we left it at that. So I brought the Coke team. We went in and we met Mr. Boogertman himself. He took us around in his, I think he had a BMW or a Volkswagen. He picked us, he took us around. He took us to the MTN head office. I think that was done by you guys. We went to see Gap, and we went to see another 2-3 architects. Eventually that commission was won by Gap Architects. But I did keep in touch with Boogertman. And so when UAP wanted to do a new tower in Nairobi, again, we managed, many people don't know, but we managed all of UAP's investments at that time in this region. The Equity Bank head office is actually was owned by UAP, still owned by, the successor company. So I told them we go to South Africa, and that's when we ran a competition, and Johan showed up with that suitcase to present like a week or two after the post-election violence on the new tower for UAP. And that's how we first met with Johan. Long story short, the the commission was won by, Johan won the commission with their design, which is now UAP Tower. And that's how we first met. Remember, he's shown up in a boardroom with a suitcase straight from the airport to present, looking a bit disheveled. He hadn't had enough sleep, I think. So if you ask me about the first impression, that was the impression. But we then struck up a good rapport, friendship. We started work on that project. And I started trying to encourage Johan and saying, you know, we need you guys to, we need more of you here. We did the master plan for Two Rivers with GAP. A lot of people, maybe Johan, you remember Chris of GAP. That's how we did the master plan for Two Rivers. It was finished, and then we started now engaging with Chris. And that's how you met Chris. And that's why he says he brought you to Kenya, because he thinks he's the one who invited you for that competition. But anyway, yeah, long story short, I started encouraging Johan to open an office here, and I told him, I'll help you. So down the line, we are working on the tower. He says, okay, I think now I'll set up. He was getting busy here. And he told me, now I will need somebody to work with, you know, to set up this office. And I had just interviewed Andrew at Westgate. Do you remember? At the back
Yeah, I remember that
business center in Westgate. And I was hiring Andrew, but to do project management. But when I spoke to Andrew, I said, this guy, he's an architect at heart. He's not going to make it as a project manager. But I really liked Andrew, and when Johan asked me, I thought these two can get along. They are mavericks. They seem to have you can tell even from this studio, these are two mavericks. So I told Johan, I think I have the guy. I was going to hire him, but I'm going to introduce you to him. If you guys gel, then I'll let him go. He can come to you, because I think he'll be better to us as an architect than a project manager. So of course, they met and they clicked it. He told me, thank you so much, I found my partner. So I said, fine, now I don't have, then he told me, but now where do I get offices? I told him, I'll give you a desk in our office. That's the desk where knees were touching, so I'll give you an office. You guys can start in our office, you get settled there. At that time, we were building Econ House. So a year later, we had finished, and so Boogertman became our first tenant, took up a business center space there, and set up the first Boogertman office with Johan and then Andrew. Later on, they poached John Kimura from me, so everyone came from John used to work for me. We had an internal architect because of our projects, and that's how I met John. And then I think John wanted to again focus on architecture. I think, John, you have a lot to thank me for, because you are very skeptical, I remember. But the fact that you stayed 10 years means it worked. So John joined them. So we have done numerous, I don't know how many projects. I lost count a long time ago. They continue to do projects for us. I think we have a number ongoing. We have something here on Chiromo. We are doing new projects. I don't know which ones you're involved in anymore. I lost count. Are you at Northlands? Yeah, Northlands. So we continue to work together. I moved out of the profession, as I said, many years ago. But now I support a lot of, people in the industry, architects, contractors, and all of that. I don't know if I've answered your question or I went off tangent,
I like
but that's how. So I'm really proud, actually, to see Boogertman, how it has grown. At some point, they told us we are going to go get our own space now. We've grown. We are big boys. I said, please go ahead. I came here for the opening. That's the last time I was here. How long have you been here now?
Almost 6 years.
Yeah,
6
so I've
years.
not been here in 6 years. So thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much. No, that was good. So we've seen Boogertman starting from 0 minus 5 years, you know, to being coming to birth, the Boogertman in Kenya coming to birth, being taken through, sharing desks and all that. So now Andrew has been introduced to the story. Chris comes in at 5 years old, I believe, like 2017. So, you know, was it 2017, Chris?
Yes.
So before we jump to 2017, let's do the years in between, yeah? So, Andrew, where does the Boogertman Kenya journey begin? In your opinion, at what point? Because if you listen to that whole tale, there was the suitcase. Was that fully the Boogertman Kenya journey, or was it still like, you know, putting your leg in and sort of, you know? So in your opinion, you know, Johan says it begins in 2008. What do you say?
Yeah, so in my opinion, for me, the Boogertman journey began a lot earlier. So number one, I want to say I'm really privileged to sit with the gentleman on this panel. And I want to talk about one thing, which is aligned energies. So for me, that's where the Boogertman story started. It's about aligned energies. Because I'm listening to 2008, I just come back from the US, started my first job in Kenya. I was that crazy guy. You know, Robbie, you talked about a motorbike. I was famed for, you know, riding my motorbike around town, very restless. Where's Gurmukh? Did he leave? I think there's a lot of guys also who are from planning systems. We used to work with them. I was a very restless character. And my energies were saying, just like Edward was saying, there was a need for better architecture. I think that's why we are in this forum. And the better architecture doesn't stop with work in Kenya. I want to extend it beyond, because even the discussions today are about a vernacular in Africa. So for me, there was aligned energies. Edward wants to do better in architecture for the region and the region beyond. I'm restless, riding a motorbike around Nairobi. And there's Johan with his suitcase. I want to really thank this. So we should frame this suitcase. So Johan is also getting restless. And you know, Johan is not saying very openly. One of the reasons that Johan wanted to, of course, open an office in Kenya is because, look, he had done everything there was to do around architecture. He was involved in one of the biggest projects in South Africa in Soccer City Stadium. So what more do? You open an office in a region that's not, you've never even been to other than climb a mountain. So I think there was aligned energies. That's the beginning of it. And I think for all the architects sitting in the room, young students who are aspiring to you know, join the profession and work, that's where it begins. There's aligned energies. As long as you're applying your mind 100%, the connection will happen. So interestingly, and this was a very, and thank you for admitting that you didn't want to hire me, but I interviewed with Edward Kirathe, and the first thing after the interview, he made it very clear that I can't work for Edward Kirathe, but he's going to introduce me to someone else. So that introduction now to Johan was a very interesting introduction, because again, back in those days, all I had was a motorbike. So I show up to a meeting, first interview with Johan at Village Market, Johan, if you can remember. I ride my bike, I show up early, I put my helmet on a table, and I hear somebody tap me to talk about my bike. So for about 30 minutes, I'm talking to this gentleman about my bike, relative to the helmet. And then he says, now we start the interview. Oh, I didn't know I was expecting this guy to do an interview. So again, I'm going back to that comment. Where did the Boogertman journey start? It started with aligned energies, because we talked about motorbikes for 30 minutes, Johan being an avid rider as well, him trying to understand my bike. I think the appointment was made on riding bikes, not on the architecture. So it goes back again to that point, and that's for me where the journey started. It's aligned energies, and I think a lot of people in the room today, even when we're having the discussion on art and the appropriate vernacular architecture, there's an aligned energy, and that's why we have gentlemen who've joined us from, you know, art and architecture, and we are going to extend this conversation beyond. So for me, that's where the journey starts. Now, I want to just conclude it by adding another element that is very important on why we are all sitting on the panel and celebrating 10 years. I think I've said it so many times, there's a tag at the entrance there that says the collective plus. And the collective plus is about collaboration. So one of the reasons why we open our studio on this 10th year is to really celebrate that collaboration, because Edward we've collaborated quite a bit on all the projects that you've done. I think the story, starting from UAP up until the projects we're working with you currently, are about collaboration. And I'll really be interesting to hear from Chris, who's the new kid on the block.
Wow.
Yeah, I said it.
You could say the new old kid on the block.
Yeah. You said old, I didn't say it. So I think it will be interesting to hear from Chris whether that's collaboration and that collective plus is a true collaboration. And I think when we get to the projection of the 20 years beyond this 10, I'd want to hear whether that's the direction we're going. And this engagement and conversation really needs to be with the guys who are currently working with Boogertman and the clients we're working together with as well.
Yeah, okay. So you've preempted. That's why you shouldn't have discussions with your bosses, yeah? So he's preempted my question. So now we've done the journey. We're doing the journey, yeah? So we come up to Chris, yeah? Chris, I think, well, when did you first interact with us? 2017?
Literally, I got off the plane with 2 suitcases.
Yeah.
Because I've got kids, yeah? So I had 2 suitcases. And I landed on the 19th of August 2017. I went straight into an investment committee meeting on the Monday. On the Tuesday, I think I was in your office saying, okay, guys, tell me what we're building. And we built 2 beautiful office buildings. And then since then, we had to build them because the plans look beautiful and everything else. But there was a lot of engagement because I come and I try and get value for money. I try and squeeze out every square inch. And we did. And I know you got upset quite a number of times. Andrew lost his hair. But
No, I lost my hair before that.
okay. Well, the little you had left. And I lost my hair as well. And yeah, I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing architectural firms worldwide. So I've been in other countries. I've worked with the Chapman Taylors, the BDPs, RTKLs, and you guys are in that category. You really are. And it pains me to say that, but it's true.
Thank you.
And, I thought that our first project together, the economy was shaky. We were doing like Grade B office building. We knew the rents were going to get hammered. So we really had to tighten the screws. And you guys came to the party. You came to the table. We did a lot of redesign. We looked at all the common areas. We squeezed everything down. And I think because of that and that collaboration and you didn't lock the door when you saw me coming to the building, got us where we are today. And I think they're going to sell that asset, and I think it's going to make a profit, which is great in this current climate. And then kind of fast forward the last 12 months, I now just do residential development. Took Andrew to go and see what we do in Ghana, and then yeah, it's a new chapter. We're doing townhouses and we're trying to do affordable housing, believe it or not. But I look forward to continuing the journey. I really do. And please don't give up on us.
Yeah, so if I may add to that journey, and Robbie, as you're standing there asking us questions, the architect who was working in collaboration with Chris is actually Robbie. So Robbie led that project. So again, part of the journey, you're still part of it. So don't run away from it. And that was a good experience. Again, working with Chris on a project, and again, you being new in the country and delivering a project to a profit. So I hope part of that profit is gonna. No, I didn't say it out loud.
No, but interesting. The buildings in Garden City Business Park. The initial feasibility study indicated a rent of $1.20. I don't know if this thing is working, but in any case, as long as you can hear me, it was a $1.20 building. And he came to us and said, guys, this has to become a $1 building. So we had to cut anything except lettable area and bring the cost down to $1.20, which we eventually were able to do. Yeah, thanks. So, Chris, lovely collaboration up to now. He was almost a resident in the building. He had his own parking spot downstairs.
Actually, we actually added 10% of additional area, and we were 10% under budget.
Yeah, we did.
It's sort of a case study. I mean, I went back to my investment committee, and they think, no, that's never been heard of. I didn't get a bonus. Makes sense.
Yeah, that's why we are still asking for the profit.
All right. So this next question, it cuts across to each of you in a different way, because the main thing is I want to know, how has the industry changed, over this? I'm calling it since BPKE 0 and BPKE 10, How has the industry changed?
Incredible. You guys cannot imagine that the first time I came in here with my suitcase, there was no dual carriageway from the airport to the city, never mind the expressway. That was only recently built. There was no southern bypass, no eastern bypass, no northern bypass. The only thing that was in progress at the time was massive excavations on the way to Thika Road. And it stood like that for possibly, I would think, 18 months. It looked as if nothing was happening. And I eventually made out for myself what they're doing. As they excavate, they cut off pipes, they cut off cables, they cut off sewer lines, and then they go and discover who does this belong to, and then they redirect them. So to say that Nairobi really has got this amount of infrastructure in the last 10 years is actually quite incredible.
Oh, really? No, that's interesting. Yeah.
And another thing that changed, and that's the profession itself. When we arrived here, we were the new kids on the block. We had new software, which the guys had maybe heard of here, but they definitely weren't as adept as we were at presenting, doing the drawings and stuff like that, doing 3D modeling of our buildings. And that certainly set the bar. But make no mistake, people are fast learners. We are not alone on that bar anymore. We need to raise the bar beyond that. So if we talk about what lies in the future, it would be to raise that bar, because the local industry has caught up. The bulk of the people here are the most incredible tech-savvy young Kenyans that you can imagine, that if you give them something, they will be able to put it together. However, still, Kimura, I need to hold your hands when we do door schedules. That's part of the raw deal. I look at drawings. And then if you ask us, what's the road ahead? Then I have to say this, design will remain paramount. And design might not be done by architects only, because worldwide you can see people like Calatrava designing buildings, not only those fantastic bridges. Design will remain paramount, because eventually that's what we do. We create spaces for people within buildings and also around buildings. In other words, our civic spaces, our public areas. Design is going to be paramount. I think the professions are going to have to change the way in which they model themselves to earn a living from that, because the squeeze, as Edward would be able to say to you, is on the bottom line, consistently on the bottom line. How can we bring building costs down? That brings me to another thing. I think building construction will change, and potentially faster than we can. We're building at the moment with the cheapest method, mortar, masonry, and cheap labor. We are actually destroying the rivers of Kajiado County. We're destroying rivers where sand has been mined to the extent that they're down on bedrock. 10 meters down from the surrounding ground, all the sand has been removed. Our quarries will eventually run out of stone. So we are going to have to find new materials, new methods of building, and because time is money, and again, Edward will talk to that, Chris will talk to that, we have to build faster than what we had done before. So I still see a rosy future for the design industry, but we, and I'm talking collectively to visiting architects here as well, we will have to pull up our socks to get to a model where we can provide the service, the design service, excellently. Because other people will definitely come into play. Construction managers, project managers already are coming into play, and those type of people, and that erodes into the traditional architect's role of being the chief kid on the block. He walks on site, he does site meetings, he does letters, he does minutes, he does IPCs, and he does the snagging. Those things might change a bit, but I'm an advocate for it that design will be paramount.
Okay. No, Johan, I was going to jump straight to Edward and Chris with a question on the changing on the changing industry. But before I do that, you touched on something important about the construction methodology, and I'll throw this to the crowd and call out one of the main contractors we work with, Leah. I know you're not expecting this, yeah? But yeah, it just when Johan mentioned the idea that we have to change how we build, really, that is almost the next thing we do if we are to keep that bottom line, so what's your opinion on this? What's the future of construction for you? What do you think will happen next? How will we build faster? What will we do? Yeah, for those who don't know, Leah is a senior.
That's a hospital pass, eh?
Yeah, so Leah is senior project manager with Mahesh and Ta, and we have done a number of construction projects with them. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Robbie, and congratulations on your 10 years. Is a contractor, or where is the future of construction? I feel, as Andrew and Johan mentioned, collaboration is, sometimes I feel we leave out the people we are building for. What is the future of construction? Maybe I'll ask one, maybe very general question. I'll maybe take a project, say, Two Rivers. There was Boogertman, there was Centum, and there was many other consultants that were involved. How does the community relate to that project? In the past 10 years, I feel we're doing construction, but we're not relating to the community. I feel the future of construction is when everyone can relate to what we are doing. I feel we've been able to meet the requirements. We've been able to work with we've been able to lower the energy and the power and the water. But what are we living with these people? We are living with the building. I feel that's a whole topic we can look into. As Johan mentioned on the programs, the minutes, and the reports during the construction period, I think the future is digital. We've moved, and I believe we're all learning and we are all engaging in. Everyone is in touch with what is happening, and we are growing as a country. We've really grown, and I feel we're doing well, but we can do better. And matters time, matters quality. I feel that's. We are doing well and we're doing better, and I would say, Boogertman, you're good at your quality and at the supervision levels, yeah.
Okay, so Leah is a very smart person, so she's completely gone around my question. So Leah, we're going to capture you later, and because I still wanted you to tell me, is the contractor ready to build faster? What does the contractor's opinion, from the contractor's opinion, what do you think will enable you to build faster? Are you ready to change building materials? Are you willing to build the less cheaper way if you can build faster? Are you...
Less cheaper way means more equipment and less time for us.
Yeah.
So yes, we are.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, good to know. No, thank you. Thank you for the direct answer. So now I come to Edward and Chris. Yeah. So when we talk about how the industry has changed, Johan has told you, but he's told us from a very architectural point of view. I remember student housing from the initial design. So if I give that example, from the initial designs of what it was and what it has now evolved into, seeing what it is, that in itself is an indication of a changing industry, which in your, I suppose from your career, could be market-driven or driven by other forces than what is driven from in our career, yeah? So I want you to come from that point of view. And even Chris, especially in your journey into Indigo Homes and the kind of product coming out of it, the dignified products, some starter homes and some of the projects we were working with together, yeah? Some of the, trying to unlock them together, like, and has Kenya actually matured into that? Are we willing to now, not just want to live in a space, not just want to have a roof over our head, but we now care about, the space we are at? And is it that people did not care 10 years ago, or what happened? So I don't know if you understand where I'm going with the question, but I want you to almost, come around the circle to the center. Yeah.
Okay. You've asked a very long question, but I think that at the chase is what is changing, what's going to change. I think that's what you're focused on. So 20, 25 years ago, and this hasn't changed, I was told about the peculiarities of the construction industry. It's the only major industry in the world that delivers defective products to its clients. There's no other industry. You would not go to Seattle and take a Boeing aircraft and you're told here is a list of 100 defects. We have 6 months defects liability period. After that, we'll sort them out and we'll give you our... You can never go to the showroom. You cannot go to the Apple shop and pick up your told, here is a list of, we have 40 defects, but we have 6 months, we'll fix it. And related to that, therefore, the construction industry has never been able to give warranties for the buildings that we develop. And in addition to that, there's the whole issue about cost. So it's an industry with its own peculiarities. The world has been trying to address that in many ways. And I think that's going to drive part of the changes. But if I just focus on the changes I see, first 20, 25 years ago, who was the client? For commercial real estate, and I mean commercial, whether I mean you're building houses or you're building a shopping center or you're building offices, the clients were mostly, the large clients were mostly insurance companies, even banks. In the 90s, banks used to build. Today, the clients, at least institutional clients, are more sophisticated developers who, as you said, park their cars permanently here like Chris and spend their time here trying to reduce costs. I heard Chris speaking, I thought of the same thing my guys do and the pain points. They are more sophisticated. These are not people who are not builders. I remember I used to go to boardrooms with the people you're describing, the Chris Kirubis, the Joe and Juies of this world, if you remember. They are not builders, these are just businessmen. They were not sophisticated clients, but you're going to, I think as a profession, especially, I don't know about social architecture, but when it comes to commercial architecture, you're going to be dealing with much more sophisticated clients. That I can tell you for a fact. So type of client is going to be a big difference. The next thing, of course, it's been mentioned, technology. Technology is two ways. One, it still takes too long to turn around drawings here. If you go to some of the sophisticated firms, and I know Chris has said, and I agree that Boogertman, when it comes to design, you are among the best I have ever seen, in all my experience. Now we have the thing where we lag behind in this market is the turnaround time and the use of technology. The amount of design output, if you go and work with some of the firms in the Middle East, the amount of output they can give and turn around, it's just phenomenal. The production. But then there has been a lot of BPO outsourcing into India for certain things, which we should do. Because you want, your clients are going to want you to move quicker, faster, more efficiently. Just expect that. So I think there is adaptation of technology. at the farm level. But then also the buildings we are now asking for, we've got to integrate a lot of, in our buildings we are now integrating visitor management systems and controls and access control and all of that in a very sophisticated way. That's going to increase. I think the last thing I would say is, I just came maybe 2 weeks ago. I was in London and I was walking down the street, and now there are weatherproofing sites so that you can work in any weather. We have an event, and that's going to be a big change. I can tell you it's coming. The technology is early stage, but you imagine an inflatable balloon which is blown up on a site, and then you build inside it. And you build whether it's raining, shining, you build day and night, because and again, this is something I learned in my years in project management, because clients are going to need you to build faster, to build more predictably, to build better quality. And so we need to be prepared for the changes. And I don't think here everybody is seeing the changes and how they're going to impact the professions of the contractors, the consultants. Because if we don't, what's going to happen is, right now it's not been possible, like for the big contractors. I mean, I interviewed Murray and Roberts, the other guys. What are they called? Are they called Big Five or Five something? Group 5 in South Africa. We tried to bring them here just like we brought the architects. The thing about Kenya, it's one of the, and most people don't know this, construction costs in Kenya are one of the lowest in Africa. Construction costs in Kenya are some of the lowest in Africa, I can tell you. You go to try and build an office block in Uganda or go to some of the other markets. It's one of the lower markets. The international contractors have struggled to pay. That's why you don't see Scansa here. You're not seeing those Murray and Roberts. You remember we tried with Murray and Roberts. We just couldn't make the numbers work. But with technology, what's happening with technology, you're going to see a lot of change and a lot of other people starting to take an interest. So if the market doesn't change here, you'll find that people will come in and take your dinner. So it's very important to start thinking about how these changes are going to affect the industry going forward.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, Chris.
I can remember the question. That's a good start. So I'm quite excited actually, because we're bringing a new home builder to this beautiful country. It's called Indigo Homes, and we were born in Ghana about 6 years ago, and we build these beautiful townhouses. And I mean, obviously I have to say that. I can't say they're not beautiful. But this guy here will testify, because we took him up to Ghana for 3 days, and yeah, he was impressed. Yeah, I mean, you actually said this is really going to work. And no, you're not getting a discount. You asked for a discount as well. So, we're going to come here. We're going to launch. My background is actually affordable housing. I was in Colombia and Brazil, and guess what? We build hundreds and hundreds of thousands of houses. And here we build. How many houses do we build here per year? Does anyone know what that number is? Because I'm desperate to find out what it is. I know we built 93 affordable houses last year, but I don't know how many houses we build in total. Let's say it's like, yeah. There you go. I have my number. The quality of those houses, I think that's where we can come in and try and make a difference. Cost is one thing. Cost in Ghana is incredible. It really is very expensive. We have to import everything. And we're now looking at other channels. Here we have a little bit more flexibility. You can look within the country, you look within the continent, and then if not, then we have to go to China or Turkey or wherever. So I would love to be able to try and crack the affordable housing itch. I really would. I took part in the task force 4 years ago. No one listened to me, maybe because I just turned up, but You know, I think that's where the challenge really is. You know, I've seen it be incredibly successful in quite a few countries. And when it does take off, and when you have a government that actually actively promotes and has a framework which allows the private sector to come in and start delivering, then you will see, you'll see the economy itself will certainly ignite. So that's what I'm looking forward to over the next 5 years. You know, we're going to bring the business here, we're going to do these beautiful townhouses, but my board, talk about a challenge, because the cost of capital now is quite significant. When you then add in Africa, then you add in development and affordable housing, wow, it's a challenge. So we've actually got a project that we've just done the underwriting on. We go to our investment committee in 2 weeks' time. It's not a big project, but it's probably the most work I've ever done in terms of underwriting, in terms of getting all the data, the memo put together, and I'm confident we're going to get there. But I think it just goes to show you the challenges that we face, because we need foreign investment. We need a lot of it. Yeah, we can't build with our own, financial service providers that we have in this country. They're not enough by a long way. So we need to be more pragmatic, innovative, but you've always got to appreciate cost of capital and the risks involved in doing what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Andrew.
Yeah, so I'm going to be very brief with the change. And I want to link Boogertman at 40, because again, Boogertman+Partners is celebrating 40 years since 1982. And I want to link it to the change that I'm seeing in architecture in the construction industry. So to begin with, of course, the gentleman Boogertman, who founded the firm before the partners crept in, and now they're bigger than Boogertman. He actually resigned on an AOB in a board meeting, and his reason was the firm had grown so big compared to what he had ever envisioned, and he wanted to do sustainable developments. Now, as a firm, when he was exiting, sustainability, green building, green star rating was just a discussion. But I think one of the biggest change that everyone in the room needs to appreciate is we have no option other than to build sustainably. So today we've been discussing the African vernacular, what's the appropriate vernacular. But for me, one of the changes, and the biggest change, even from a financing point of view, is, are you building sustainable developments? What does the future, and this is now the outlook, what does the future look for the people who are going to sit on a panel or sit in a building that was designed beyond us? So we have no option. And again, we've been talking about Africa quite a bit, but one of the biggest changes, and it's something we have to gear up for, is sustainable development. Now, the benefit is we're in Africa and infrastructure is a problem. So I use the best example of wastewater treatment plants. Before, when people were developing buildings in Nairobi, it was always sink a borehole, sink a septic tank, right? So now we have no option because there's no infrastructure. You have to put wastewater treatment plants. So we are being forced to be sustainable without having to think about it. But very soon it's going to get to a point where we have no option than to design sustainably. So that is one of the biggest changes, because it touches on a lot of other things. Speed of construction, it touches on cost. Sustainability is key. And I want to extend that discussion to a point that happened a few months ago. There's a gentleman here called Douglas Thinwa who came and interviewed with us. And me, when you're interviewing with me, I'll run my search on what you're telling me so that I can benefit my own company. So he introduced me a few tools called COV tools that he uses in school for sustainability. Now, yes, we design, we orient the building in the right way. Do we test them? Do we test them so that Edward doesn't get a building that has 100 snug lists? He wants to get a Boeing airplane that flies, right? So how do you test that building so that you make sure from a sustainability point of view, it's no longer a dream or an aspiration, it's actually reality. Do you have tools that you're testing sustainability? So I'm really keen on sustainability as an angle, because even the discussions earlier today were focused so much on material use. Are you importing things? Somebody talked about white aluminum windows on a building in Morocco. So are you using local materials? The angle now is changing to sustainability. So for me, that is the biggest change. And just taking back the comment that Henk Boogertman made when he left, and he said he was going to develop, and he did. Menlyn, Maine is a new city. Cliff, you talked about Africa and new cities. That was a new city that was built on the premise of sustainable goals. Every building in that precinct must get a Green Star rating. And the Green Star rating relates to sustainability. Are you recycling water until you can drink it 7 times after treating it? Are you using, the right materials? Have you tested the buildings with the tools that Douglas has been informing us around? And so that is one of the biggest changes. And then just to close out on another change in the construction industry, and especially how design happens. And today, of course, we are streaming online to a bigger audience. And I think, Johan, we should have bought shares in Zoom. So design paradigm shifted, totally changed. So Johan and his suitcase, he did 1 year, 15 trips to Kenya. I think last year you did 2 or 3. But he's constantly involved in the engagement around design, in the engagement around construction. And what the whole pandemic and disruption of the pandemic taught us is that we need to embrace that change in terms of how we design, how we approach the whole design paradigm. So that's a softer element, but it's something that is definitely a big change in terms of how the profession has matured.
Can I just quickly jump in and touch on the sustainability thing? Guys, it's real. The shortage of the basic utilities of electricity and water is real. If I tell you the sorry story in South Africa, the load shedding that we have is going through stages 2, 3, 4, 5. When it gets to stage 4, you will have at least 6 hours less electricity every day. There are periods when you have no power for 12 hours. Not in one batch. They take 2 hours here, 2 hours there, 4 hours over here. That's electricity. And coupled to that, the immense pressure to switch from coal, which we've got truckloads of, to switch to sustainable means, solar, wind, etc., is massive. Secondly, water has always been bubbling under as the next pandemic, and it's now hit us. There are certain areas in Johannesburg who's been without water, suburbs, without water for 3 weeks. 3 weeks without water. And our main source of water, which is the Vaal Dam, it's a man-made massive dam which collects water from mountainous areas, is full. But the water gets pumped, and the pumps run on load-shedded electricity. So can you see the cycle, what's happening? We are running short of water because we don't have enough power to pump the flippin' water to where it has to be. So it is so real that you switch from being marginal in terms of water security to crisis. It is so real. It's just a flick of 2, 3, and I know we're currently here in a dry season, and it's going to last for a couple of years. So the sustainability thing is going to be massive, more and more. And I think water is actually going to be the biggest one. We can all, in a way, live without electricity. We can have a battery, we can use our car's battery. But boy, oh boy, you can't survive without water.
Yeah, I think maybe, Johan, let me just add something, because I can tell you we've mobilized probably about $250 million to date in this space of capital is moving towards sustainability. So to what you guys are saying, there will be no money for projects that don't meet certain standards. So I think it's already on the wall for, especially if you're going to be doing the cutting edge, if you aspire to be one of the leading firms in the leading projects. But when we are talking sustainability, everyone thinks of energy, water, and embedded carbon in materials. Most of you, at least you guys know, we did the green bond in London. But the other thing that people are not watching, and I'm glad there are some contractors in the room, a lot of money now wants to know even how worker welfare is being taken care of on sites, from safety to how they eat, it's become such a big issue. How you dispose waste. In our typical Kenyan construction sites, contractor brings a JCB and a tipper, loads materials, goes and dumps it in Dandora. And nobody in the profession is checking on that. These are becoming much more important today. What are you doing with the waste from the site? Why do you have so much waste on the site? Is there ways to reduce that? Now, it sounds like do-gooders who are out there doing this, but I can tell you all the capital in the world is starting to move to look at those things. Qatar got so hammered for the World Cup stadiums. There are even people boycotting the World Cup. They are not showing up. I think the Dutch said they are not setting up in the village. There are enough people who are now saying, no. If you treat workers that way, if this is how you deal with waste, it's going to become an issue. So again, that's an area I think the profession and the industry needs to start getting conscious. You never bothered where the contractor took that extra soil. He just excavates, he tells you he's taken it. You need to start becoming aware that this is becoming an issue. What's IB doing with waste? How are you treating workers on site? I particularly like the issue of workers on site because for years, man, they've been trampled upon. And we need to improve working conditions on our sites. For me, I'm very keen on improving working conditions, yeah.
Yeah, and then of course the composition of the workers. I think now more than ever, Leah, thanks, you're representing Mahesh and Tath, but as well, there's a move now to have more women representation in construction, not only in design. I think in design also we need to improve on it, but that's another element in terms of your SDG goals. We need, ladies, we need you on the team.
I think Chris had one more thing.
No, just following on and probably just wrapping up. The government really need to take this quite seriously and give the private sector some pretty robust tax concessions and incentives, because otherwise we just pass it on to someone else, like our buyers. So I'm all for it, and we do have sustainable, we build green. I mean, IFC, let's be honest, it's quite diluted, yeah? Here's a statistic that just proves what I'm saying, and then I'll shut up. Garden City has the biggest solar farm in East Africa. It costs more than it does using the grid. Why? Because we get no concessions. Yeah, we have to pay high interest. So I've left that company now, but still, it's a good statistic. That was feeding quite a significant amount of power to that shopping mall. And do you know what I think they might end up doing? Turning it off. No, they won't. Don't quote me on that, but I'm just saying. But if I was them, I've left now. But, you're paying quite a considerable amount of money more. And have a guess who pays for that? The tenants. It's paid through the service charge. If I'm a tenant in there and I'm barely making ends meet, I'm going to be turning around saying, you know what, guys? Let's just go on the grid. So, it's serious collaboration, because you can't look at developers and say, well, you guys have got to go green. You guys have got to do this, you've got to do that. Yeah, great, we're all ears, but we have investors, pension funds, everything else.
All right.
Yeah, and I think that's where the consultants, you have to come in, because at the end of the day, like Kenya Power sells you power at 21 shillings a kilowatt hour. We are being able to do solar nowadays at Abadeha, it's 3 at 11 shillings per kilowatt hour solar, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, and we didn't have to put in the capital cost. We only pay for usage. So there are a lot of new models coming in to make things sustainable, which we need to explore so that we don't end up with a situation like Garden City where they are paying more for their power, trying to do sustainability shouldn't cost you, and if it's costing you, then there's something you're not doing. It should not increase your cost as a developer. If it's doing that, then you have to relook at it, because then it's not serving its purpose. And I know that for many people, they see it as, okay, it's like worker welfare. It shouldn't cost us more. It should reduce time of lost hours. It's safer sites. You lose less hours. All these things. Yeah.
No, I hear you. No, thank you very much for that. Time has run, but we'll take 2 burning comments or questions from, from the audience. Yeah, go ahead.
Try keep it Boogertman at 10.
Yes.
I am just going to add on the change that has happened, in that Andrew has forgotten a very important step and critical step before he gets to site, that the legal and statutory requirements of getting to site. We've moved from an era where we were submitting things manually to submitting things online, but still with a hitch. So I think for us to be able to, so for us to be able to actually be on site on time and for Leah to begin work constructions on time, because that is what I do anyway. I dread seeing Andrew's call every morning because Joanne is my approval. And I'm like, can't we just have efficient county government systems? Can't we just have a one-stop shop for all our approvals, you know? And having read a lot about other countries and what they do, they are one-stop shops. You don't have to do changeovers. You don't have to do NEMA reports every day because this building is similar to the other one. Whatever report I did here is similar to the other one. So that is one of the major changes that maybe 10 years from now, we will be sitting down and thinking, nowadays you just upload stuff and approved in one day and we're done. And you see the length of the approvals is shortened by how much money the client has. So if the client doesn't have enough money to lubricate the system, then the approval is stuck for a year or 2, which is a bit unfair anyway. So it's an area where we as consultants need to push our county governments to adapt or to adopt into efficient systems that actually work.
Okay, thank you for that, Joanne.
Maybe let me comment on that. So I completely agree. We did a calculation. You need 35. We need for each of our buildings 35 different licenses and approvals throughout the life of the project. Yeah, it's crazy. We of course are engaging national government on how to sort this out, but there are so many vested interests. I'm not sure they'll be doing that soon. So just expect to continue receiving those calls. However, what we also have to kind of mitigate is this whole thing of greasing systems. So investing in good corporate affairs is something that developers we have to start investing more of, so that we are not dealing with small issues of small guys asking you for this, the other, because we've killed most of that stuff. But you have to then get more into the corporate affairs space, like multinationals do. So that's something to consider for the industry. Yeah, because and at the end of the day, it costs you less, and it's more sustainable than going around with envelopes. Yeah. So, but we have got to invest in corporate affairs. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for that, Edward, and clarifying on that. And that's true. We actually, I was going to give a disclaimer about the comment on the greasing hands, because I don't know any project that does that. So, and the second question, somebody? Yeah. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Tom Smiu. I'm an electrical engineer. So you talked about sustainability, sorry. So what measures are you taking on these buildings that you are preparing? Sustainability.
Sorry, just ask that again. What measures are
you taking on the sustainability factor of the buildings? Sustainability.
What measures?
Yes.
Sustainability of the building.
Or abilities or systems you have in place.
Well, the whole sustainability thing, as we were saying earlier, it's about energy, water, and embodied carbon in your materials.
That's correct, yes.
So Johan talked about, for example, this thing of continuing to mine stones and get sand from all the rivers in Ukambani. if we can use other alternative methods, and
Yes.
they're there, I mean, that will help stop that degradation. Okay? You look at your water consumption in your building, you look at your energy, how do you reduce your energy consumption?
Yes.
There are many ways to do that.
Yeah.
And how do you reduce? Those are the main ones when it comes to sustainability.
But it actually also starts with what the sustainability and consultants call passive interventions.
Yeah.
So what is a passive intervention? A passive intervention is first and foremost to site your building correct in terms of the arc of the sun. So you don't want this building to face west. You want it to face north. Is to design your building, the width of your building, in such a manner that you can get cross ventilation. Those are passive things. It costs you absolutely nothing to do that. So those are key things that we implement even before there's a sustainability engineer on board.
Yeah.
It's so-called passive interventions.
But if the road maybe is facing that side, you want your hotel to be on this side, how do you orient it?
No,
You see, you want your road to face, your house to face the road. Is there a way you can turn it to where you are
there are
saying?
ways of skinning the cat. What you don't want to do is what they did on a famous building in Australia.
Yes.
It was a 6-star building. It still is a 6-star building, the top of Green Star.
Yeah.
And they had an atrium facing west onto a public square. So what did they do? They just put in triple glazing. Now, in my mind, that is not clever. You paying the cost of money of triple glazing to keep the heat out. Just orientate the building, make a different design solution so that you don't have to deal with the afternoon sun. But it's a collaborative. Andrew dwells on the collaboration issue very often. It's really, really collaboration, right from client through to the QS who eventually puts the figures into the BQ.
Sure.
There's one area that we're looking at, just one specific example. We're looking at foamed concrete. Yep, then you just Google it. Echo Stone do it. They're massive in Nigeria, now in Ghana. There's no aggregate. There's very little rebar. You get a phenomenally smooth finish, so it saves on remedial works, has better green efficiencies as well, thermal, sound. That's stuff that we're looking at, but at the end of the day, it's cost as well. So they're all out there, but you've got to go through a proper evaluation process. Just to answer your question, you know the one, this young lady here that's on your phone. So I tell you what I've seen in other countries that's been unbelievable. When I was in Colombia in the 1960s, all the contractors and all the developers got together. They formed an organization. They become really powerful. Powerful to the extent that they had the listening, they had the ear of the government. So that whenever policies were made, whenever frameworks were put in order, they were consulted and consulted properly. I built in Colombia, I built in Brazil. It's significantly easier than building here. Significantly easier. Why? Because of institutions like that. I think it's called Camacol Guild or whatever. We're trying to do that. We've just started. It's an initiative I've started 3 months ago. I've got 8 developers in a room. We meet every 2 months. Hey, might work, might not. I'll do my little bit. But just opening that up, we have another contract in here and maybe some other developers in the room. That's the only way forward. You cannot sit on your behind and expect the government one day to wake up and think, let's make it easier for you. Yeah, there's reasons why they do that today. But the only way to do it is to grasp the nettle and to go at it head on with more than one voice.
No, thank you for that. And what a closer, yeah? Andrew, you had something to say as we're closing up? Now, all right then. So thank you so much, gentlemen. It was lovely. We're hoping that B+P at 20 will happen. Oh, really? That's unfortunate. Yeah. No, so wonderful. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the evening and let the discussions continue.